All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to arrive. We know life and work at home is crazy, so just bear with us a minute or two and we will get started shortly. You should have had like some elevator music or something queued up.
Yeah, right.
So how's the weather there? Has it started to look like spring, or what's the situation?
Yeah, it never really stopped looking like spring this year. So it's been pretty nice. And now we're going on like 3 walks a day just to get out the house.
Yeah, you have to stretch your legs, keep your sanity. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're lucky to be able to take advantage of it.
Nice. We've been getting a lot of rain over the past few days, which is needed in California since we, have had a few droughts in the past 3 to 4 years. But it looks like it's going to be a clear, beautiful day. So definitely a good time to go out.
Yeah. Yeah. Also very thankful to be out of the city, New York, during all this. And it's a lot easier to take walks around here than it would be in Brooklyn. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's exactly right. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started, Corey?
Okay, great. So welcome everyone to our webinar all about working from home. So the goal of this is, we know that a lot of people suddenly had to implement work from home policies unexpectedly. It's very difficult to plan around that and suddenly have to make contingencies for your teams. So we've been working from home ourselves at Lincoln since our inception. A lot of our team members have worked from home before we started at Lincoln. So the goal of this is to share lessons that we've learned over the past few years and hopefully give you some tools to be able to incorporate into your team. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We have some slides and then we'll just get the discussion going.
And Corey, while you are pulling up the slides, I want to remind everyone that there should be a chat function on your screen. So feel free to toss us questions anytime during our conversation, and we will make sure to get to your questions as we move forward.
Okay. My screen should be shared now. Let me just double check, make sure everything's showing up properly. Yep. All right. All right, so to jump in, Garrett, why don't you go ahead and share some of your background?
Yeah, so my name is Garrett Johnson. I'm one of the co-founders of Lincoln Network. We, as an organization, have been around for a little over 6 years, going into our 7th year. For the first few years, no one was full-time. So the organization was completely remote, very much a passion project. In late 2016, Aaron, Jen, my co-founder, and I came on full-time, and we've been building our team on both the nonprofit side, Lincoln Network, and on the for-profit technical side, Lincoln Deploy, since then. Before Lincoln, I was a co-founder of a venture-backed company out here in Silicon Valley, where I currently live, called SynHub. And in my former life, I worked in the US Senate for the Foreign Relations Committee. So I lived in Washington, D.C., and worked in government for a few years before moving out to Silicon Valley. Corey?
Awesome. And as for me, so I'm currently a project manager at Lincoln Deployed, which is Lincoln Network's consulting arm. We help clients with various tech products, whether it be a new website, helping implement better data policies, helping to improve your email marketing, or completely original tools. Previously, I was at various companies from Demographics Pro to GovLoop. I spent a lot of that time working remote, doing various consulting gigs. So while I was full-time, a lot of the time I would be doing consulting at night. So that's where I had developed a comfortability with working from home. And it allowed me to jump right in when I wound up working with the Lincoln team. So very helpful. So to get the real conversation started here, I wanted to start by asking you, Garrett, what led to your initial decision to have an all remote team at Lincoln Network?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Lincoln started off as a passion project, as something that Aaron and I believed in. And our theory was that there was this community of technology professionals who wanted to get engaged in the policy conversations happening in Washington, D.C. and other state capitals. So we always had a vision that extended beyond a physical location in Silicon Valley. And so we've always taken the approach of we want to engage really smart, really capable people wherever they live. And so when he and I came on full time in late 2016, we really focused on how can we recruit talented people wherever they live and get them involved in building out this network, building out this capability, where on the policy side, we bring technology professionals to the table to talk about the important technologies that are shaping our economy. And then with Deployed, as we grow into the CTO of the Liberty Movement, as we provide technology services to so many organizations who have important missions, we want to find the best team who are aligned, who care about the mission of these organizations, and operationalize their skill set. So for us, it was really driven by wanting to find the best people. And usually, the best people are located throughout the country. And so we wanted to be able to operate to really tap into that capability that's around the country.
So as you started realizing that Lincoln Network was growing beyond anything that just you and Aaron could manage independently, what were some of the minimum guidelines that you felt you needed to establish in order to feel comfortable starting to hire remote workers? What was the process like? Yeah,
so the process was really thinking about going after talent, the right people, and building out different projects, different capabilities around that talent. So, as you know, Corey, everyone is not built for work from home environments. Some people, just really need and thrive off of human interaction, face-to-face interaction. They need that on a daily basis. They feel drained and tired if they don't have that. And so it's really important that you find not only really capable, talented people, but up front, you communicate with them and make sure that they are suited for work from home environments. So that was something that we really thought about. We also thought about how do we build the tools and the infrastructure to support work from home so that our team members didn't feel isolated. They didn't feel that they were alone, but they were still connected to a larger team. And so having the right tools, having the right infrastructure was something that we thought about at the beginning. And because we are a tech organization, we're digital first, we were able to use a lot of existing tools, new tools that made work from home possible. And as we were starting Lincoln in late 2013, early 2014, a lot of these tools were still early. Like at that point, Slack really didn't exist. Dropbox and Box were still early in their life cycle. So it was not perfect then. It certainly has gotten a lot better over the years to make work from home possible.
Yeah, and I think one thing that was very helpful for me was I was able to start as a contractor on a project. And I think that's still a way that we go about. Sometimes people are a contractor for a week or two and we say, okay, this person's a fit. let's make an offer, let's get him. But it allowed me as an employee, like a potential employee, also to feel comfortable knowing that the Lincoln Network team would be providing me with the resources to not feel alone in the world as an employee, just kind of floating around trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This model works for Lincoln. It doesn't work for everyone, but we have, I like to describe as a small army of contractors, both on the policy side, on the C3 side, and on the technical side with Lincoln Deploy, who are working with us at any given time. And we've created this pipeline of being able to transition contractors to full-time team members as everyone reaches a certain comfort level. The contractor is able to kick the tires and make sure, that they like the work environment, they like the team, they're inspired by our mission. And they were also able to see how productive is this person, how well does this person communicate remotely in a work from home environment? Because when you don't have the comfort, the ability to see everyone face to face and go over to a coworker and tap them on the shoulder and resolve an issue in real time, you really have to find people who are okay over communicating, that they are proficient with using online tools, that they don't mind Zoom calls or conference calls to clarify and to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So you have to find people who are suited for over communication, for lots of transparency, and then who are able to work independent in those types of environments.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any major hiccups early on, just immediate lessons when you were trying to work with remote? Maybe it was just when you were working directly with Aaron remote at first, or starting to expand the team, that you said, okay, we need to account for this, we need to fix this.
Yeah. So, going back to the point of over communication, as a remote team, you really can't allow bottlenecks to be created because you're not communicating, people aren't on the same page. So over communicating looks different for different environments. And we'll go into our sort of communication flow in later slides, but setting up a framework so that communication and feedback loops are happening on a regular basis to ensure people aren't out of the loop, people aren't disconnected from what needs to happen. And so, that comes from the top down. In order to be an effective leader in a work from home environment, you have to really prioritize managing first. If you just say, okay, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna solve the problem, it's faster for me to take care of it, then your team is not going to understand what's happening, how decisions are being made. They're not going to be in the feedback loop. So as a manager, as a co-founder, Aaron and I have really focused on finding capable people who are smart, self-initiators, able to get things done, but then also taking a managed first approach, where we're not wearing capes, we're not superheroes, we can't do everything ourselves. We have to empower our team to do their best work, and so we really focus on that.
Awesome. So yeah, and as you'd mentioned, one of the most important parts of trying to have a remote team is the tooling. So there's two different camps when it comes to work from home policies. Some people's natural instinct might be to say, well, I'm used to my team being at their desk from 9 to 5, sitting at their computer, being able to see what's going on. If I want to see what's happening in the office, I can just do a quick walk around, make sure everyone is being productive. So there are a lot of tools that you can install on remote hardware to make sure that your team is at their desk. You can monitor their web browsing history during work hours. You can actually access their webcam. You can see physically what they're doing, that they are sitting there.
Which is a little creepy, I will add.
Yeah, and doing work. So these tools are very effective for monitoring, but we don't use them at Lincoln. We have a high trust environment. So Garrett, what do you think of as the pitfalls to those tools? Why don't we utilize them at Lincoln? Why are we more results oriented?
Yeah, so we focus on productivity, not time in your seat. So we want to hire and empower really smart, capable people who care about doing great work, doing it in a collaborative environment, and who are mission aligned. And if you focus on either making sure that the existing team that you have is empowered and that they feel that you trust them, you are giving them the tools to do their best work. And if you're hiring new people during this work from home transition, that you have a really strong filter for finding those types of people, then it becomes less important to have to monitor their every movement and sort of be big brother sitting on their shoulder, because it all comes down to output and productivity. And so you want to find people who sort of in the tech lingo, who are 10X, who can just do 10X the amount of work that someone else in the same situation could do. And so those overperformers, those people who are driven, you will find that if you are transparent with them, if you set up effective feedback loops, if you empower them to do their best work, that you don't have to monitor the amount of time they are in front of the screen, because their work product, their productivity will speak for itself. And so that's the philosophy that we've taken. That's why we don't use these type of tracking tools, because we just fundamentally think that you are setting up a suboptimal environment if you have to rely on these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a situation like this where people were unexpectedly having to work from home, a lot of employers might not already have the laptops ready to go. There might be some situations where people are relying on home devices. So I know as an employee, it's one thing to say this is your work laptop, we purchased it. But then it's another thing in this kind of a situation where it's out of nowhere to say, hey, you have your personal, setup you spent your own dollars on. Now we want to, put this kind of software on it. So in this situation, it's definitely a lot more comfortable for workers to be able to try to implement a results-focused work environment. So obviously our ethos is that monitoring to such a degree isn't going to be the most effective way to get the results that you want. We understand there may be some sort of high trust environments where those kind of tools make a bit more sense. But for the majority of people on this webinar, for the majority of employers, they probably could think about and try to implement these kind of results environments. So the type of tooling that we use at Lincoln Network are tools like Avasa, tools like Trello. And so what these do is they give visibility not to the hours that I was sitting at a desk, but to the actual deliverables that exist. So for instance, I'll have a weekly call with my clients or with my own manager, and we'll say, okay, what are the priorities for this week? We'll have these tickets listed in Trello. Everybody who's a stakeholder on that project should have access to that to be able to see what's going on. And then they'll have deadlines on them. So whenever you're setting a deliverable, you want to make sure that there's a deadline set so that it doesn't just get caught in the backlog. So making sure that you have weekly calls for communication with your team, but that on the back end of that, there's a tech tool where somebody can say, okay, I know for my manager, for instance, okay, I know that the client is expecting this deliverable by the end of this week. I don't want to have to, take up Corey's time trying to figure out what's going on there. I should have immediate visibility over it. So tools like Avasa, tools like Trello allow you to optimize for output rather than controlling time. So you should know the value of the work that's being done within your organization. And as long as you're seeing that work is getting done, you should feel comfortable with giving your team a little bit more bandwidth in managing their own time.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things here, Corey. So, we're all living through an unprecedented time in our lives. So no one ever imagined, except for the people who just really love to be antisocial, that you would not be able to have human interaction, that you would be recommended to stay 6 feet away from people. Like, this is just a crazy time that we're all trying to adjust to. So one of the things that I would encourage everyone on the webinar to think about is, how do you use this unprecedented moment to transition and to level up your team? If you don't do it now, I don't know of a more disruptive, more opportune time to try something different. And so just think about that. There's going to be some upfront investment needed to transition to some of these tools. We're not going to suggest to you that it can be done overnight and that it's super easy to just flip a switch and your team has more transparency. It's going to take upfront investment. But if you do it now, if you focus on using these productivity tools now for the next few weeks, trust me, I guarantee you it will pay off in the months and years ahead and lead to just more productivity, better feedback loops. And then I'll also say, Corey, before I turn it back to you, that you might be thinking, if you're on this webinar, well, LinkedIn is a bunch of tech bros, and so this stuff is native to them. 2/3 of our team are technical people. They're engineers, they're product managers, they're designers. That's true. But 1/3 of our team, are people who are based in DC, who focus on the important policy work, tech policy work that we do. And that team, we still have the same filters for hiring our non-technical, our policy people, and they use the same tools. They're remote. They take a similar approach to our technical team. So these tips, this advice can be helpful for both technical and non-technical teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly also not to say that there aren't instances, even within Lincoln, where we do need to monitor hours. It's just how we do that. In tools like Avaza, if I'm getting started on a task, I'm allowed to have the ability myself to start that task, start the timer going, and end it when it's over. So we of course understand that there are instances where you may need to monitor time, but there's ways to do that without feeling intrusive and with still being able to trust your employees and have that focus be on results. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about actually growing a remote team. So how do you go about trying to confirm workplace fit when you're considering bringing someone on? What are those personality traits that you look for when interviewing?
So the filters that we use is, does the person communicate well? Do they lean into Slack and other productivity tools that we've discussed that we use in our communication flow? Do they initiate conversations and try and troubleshoot and make sure that everyone is on the same page? If you ask them a question, how do you organize your workflow? Have they thought about that? Have they spent some time thinking about the actual implementation or operation of their day-to-day task? Because we don't want it to be an afterthought. Again, when you're fully remote, you have to focus on over-communicating and making sure that feedback loops are there and relied on. And so those are some of the filters that we create when we are having conversations with someone that we're thinking about bringing on full-time, or as we are evaluating contractors who are doing work for us that we think might be a good person to transition to our full-time team.
Great. And how do you, what is the role of in-person communication throughout that process? So obviously we are 95% remote, but is it still important to get actual FaceTime? And what do you do in between FaceTime to still make people feel valued and like there's a culture being built and that they're being heard when you're not one-on-one?
Yeah, so while we are a work from home first team, we still think that human interaction, face-to-face, building a personal connection with the team is really important. So on a quarterly basis, pre-COVID-19, we got together at least 3 to 4 times per year for what we call offsites, in-person offsites. And we would do it in different places around the country. So we've done it in the Bay Area, of course. We've done it in Raleigh, where Corey is based. We've done it in New York. We've done it in Austin, Texas, I think was our last team offsite. So we fly everyone in for, maybe 48 hours, so we don't disrupt people's personal or work lives too much. And maybe half a day of that window is for in-person meetings where we're talking about mission critical work. But the other times, the meals shared together, the social interactions, the team building activities that we do, allow people to joke around, to get to know each other, and to build personal connections. So in-person interaction is really nice. If you have teams that are in the same city, individual team members, they can get together, and we encourage them to have meals. We pay for it, and so they can do that more frequently if they are in the same city or near each other. In addition to in-person communication, once a month we have our all hands call. So we get on Zoom, and each team that is sort of leading a project, they give an update, so that everyone across the organization, roughly 20 people, can get up to speed and understand what their team members are working on, what are the projects, what's interesting about those projects, and potentially how they can help. So we do those once a month. We have a very active Slack channel for just joking around. We call it the water cooler. So people are constantly tossing in memes and jokes. So those are some of the ways that we encourage team building and building a culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd just quickly add as well, whenever we're doing those meetings, we try to have the webcam so that we're still getting that FaceTime. It's a lot harder when you're on the phone to see what's going through someone's mind, and also just to get an idea of if they're actively there. Maybe they need to go answer the door real quick or something. You're on the phone. John, are you there? We've seen a lot of videos come out making fun of that recently. And if you have the webcams going, that's a little bit less of a problem. So next I want to jump into the cybersecurity question. So what concerns have you had as you've been growing your team? How do we make sure that our employees' information is secure, or our customers' information? What have been like your main concerns in cybersecurity when trying to grow a team?
Yeah, so really the focus is on keeping confidential information protected. So with a team growing, both full-time and contractors, in order to pay them, in order to provide benefits, we have to have sensitive information. So making sure that all of that personal protected information is kept secure, that we are making sure that passwords that protect these online tools are secure. So 1Password and a few other tools are what we use to make sure that we are not exposing ourselves to being breached, being hacked. So really thinking about making sure that we're not exposing our team members, our clients, and their data unnecessarily by just maintaining good hygiene. The sniff test, just the basic stuff. You don't have to go over the top, but just make sure that you are implementing the basic cybersecurity measures.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have this meme here: cybersecurity, snake oil everywhere. So in a lot of instances, cybersecurity is kind of a black box. You're using tools. How do you know which tool to trust and which tools not to trust? So on our end, as far as secure tools, what we use and how do we stress test them? So we use tools like 1Password. What 1Password allows us to do, and don't worry, this is a screenshot from their website. I didn't screenshot our 1Password account, so we're all secure here. So what this allows you to do is share passwords in a remote fashion, in a secure remote fashion. So you're not having to share over email. You're not having to share over text message or anything like that, right? There's one secure vault that you can put your password in, and then you can share it with whoever needs to be shared. And a lot of these passwords as well, you don't even have visibility over what the actual password is. You just copy it, it gets automatically copied, you paste it into the thing. You don't even see the password, and then you can log right in. So it's a very convenient tool for us to make sure that we're not getting a situation where a bad actor is getting into any of our platforms. We know that we're using this tool. If something gets out, it was not something from someone not paying attention or doing the right thing. So we know where to look for where that problem happened, and we're confident that that won't happen because we have a lot of faith in the tool. So how do we get faith in these kind of tools? Slack, for instance, I know some of their major clients, Moody's, the Nikkei Index, the Department of State. So that's one thing to look for, is to say, okay, maybe we don't have the resources ourselves to deeply stress test these tools. However, we could see that a lot of their clients are the type of organizations that are going to be able to really deeply stress test these tools and say, is this a secure form of communication where we don't have to worry about our employees or our customers' data getting stolen? So that's one of the ways that we go about making sure that we're using good tools. You always want to use popular tools as well. And you want to look a little bit deeper than just saying, are they widely used? Because, for instance, TikTok is very popular now. And I certainly wouldn't recommend using TikTok for any secure communications. So it's not just that, but that's a place to start. And then to look and say, okay, who are the major clients here? Are they trustworthy? What are their certifications?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, reports about Zoom and vulnerabilities there. So nothing is 100%. So we want to emphasize that, you have to do your best, your due diligence, but nothing is ever 100% secure. You got the picture of the telephone on there. If you're really paranoid, just pick up the telephone and, maybe the NSA is listening, but beyond that, you should be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how to know if tools are unsecure. So in my opinion, generally speaking, if the monetization model around the tool is around collecting data and advertising. So for instance, Facebook, we know that Facebook's #1 revenue source is pushing ads towards you. And the way that they do that is that they collect data about you. They learn about your interests, and then they push targeted ads. So they may not have a secure chat feature. I'm not really 100% sure myself. But what I do know is that their monetization strategy means that they're trying to collect information about me. So I wouldn't feel secure sharing any private information over Facebook Messenger. And the same with email. So I may have confidence that Gmail is a reliable, secure tool. But on the flip side of that, you never fully know what's going on the other end of Gmail. So you'll be sending it to someone whose email address maybe is on a Gmail hosted server, but you're not actually sure of that because their domain name is their organization name, something like that. So you just can't really be sure what client you're sending it to. So avoiding sending secure information over email. And then one of the ways to account for that, so you may be saying, okay, well, I need to onboard a new employee and I need to get their social security card. So how do I do that in a secure way? Well, you would use file transfer tools and protocols like ShareFile by Citrix is one of them, using Dropbox, all of these types of things to make sure that this private information like a social security card, which obviously is something that everyone should take a lot of precautions against, is being shared in a secure way. And you know that if something went wrong there, you know what tool to look at, you know where the liability kind of lies in all of that. And then the next question for you, Garrett. So if one of these tools does fail, so we have policies in place, we're doing all the right things, but something went wrong. Some data went missing, someone accessed a system that they weren't supposed to. How do you minimize liability for that and act to protect your employees and your customers?
Yeah, so I mean, you communicate aggressively with the customers, with the employees to make sure that they are mitigating risk to themselves, reporting to credit bureaus on their own, shutting down credit card information if that was sort of the data that was accessed. So you make sure that you are being transparent, you're over communicating with the customers, and then you're working with the support teams at these various platforms. Because generally it's not Lincoln or any group on this call is probably a very low priority to be hacked specifically by some type of state or non-state actor. So generally it is an entire platform, an entire company that's being hacked, and your data is caught up in the mix. So you should reach out to the company, whatever tool that you're using, and understand what measures they're taking, what resources they've made available to try and mitigate risk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've seen a lot of viral videos lately of people literally caught with their pants down. They're in the Zoom meetings and they're not really familiar with this technology. This is totally new to them. And unfortunately, they just don't realize what the norms are of this tech and how to utilize it in a way that they're able to go about whatever they need to do while protecting their privacy and the sanctity of the workplace environment as well. So what are some of the best ways to establish these new norms so that you don't have employees trying to take a call, wheezing through a gym workout, or worse?
Yeah, so the really common sense is the most important aspect here, but also having conversations with your team to make sure that they are being respectful of their colleagues' time, so that no one is waiting for people to, get through ordering food or, finishing up a gym workout when they're supposed to be on a video conference or, talking to someone via Slack and co-working on something. So, setting those norms, having those conversations is going to be a little different for every work environment. But in general, just being respectful of each person's time. I've got a 5-minute rule for internal meetings and 10-minute rule for external meetings. So if a meeting is set at a certain time and internally that team member doesn't show up within 5 minutes, I'm off. I'm not waiting anymore. And then they have to reschedule the meeting, and that rule applies for up to 10 minutes for external calls with partners. Making sure that you have included the right links in the calendar invites. So because virtual meetings are pretty much all you can do right now, and there's lots of great tools out there, some no cost, some low cost. Zoom is a paid service, but there's Google Hangout. There's lots of other services that you can use for video conference collaboration. So making sure that you're using the right links so people don't get mixed up, that meetings aren't scheduled via the same service at the same time, so there's not conflict in meetings. So just setting up protocols internally, best practices for that. And another thing to do is to encourage your team to make sure that they're taking care of their health. So as you see, I'm drinking water. Corey is seated, but I'm standing. So each person will have their own preference. But as a team member, as a manager, encourage. This is a time where we need to look out for each other. So encourage your team to make sure that they're hydrating. That they're just not sitting at their desk or on their couch for hours at a time. That they're moving around and taking care of their own personal health while they're focused on getting work done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for sure as well, it's always a good policy to make sure that you think of these contingencies, what could possibly go wrong. You get that written down. It doesn't have to be anything super complex. Just think of the things that could go wrong on a video call, make sure that you're accounting for them, and do one training with your full team so that they are aware of what these policies are aware of what they should and shouldn't be doing when they are communicating in a remote environment. And then if something does go wrong, if you have these policies in place, everyone is theoretically aware of them, and one of those boundaries gets broken. But of course, we can be somewhat understanding that being in this environment is unexpected for a lot of people. How strictly do you enforce those policies? How do you go about making sure that employee is understanding going forward, of what they should be doing?
Yeah, like we've said, Corey, this is an unprecedented time. So I think we all have to be more flexible, more forgiving than we normally perhaps would be. If something happens, communicate with your team, the individual who perhaps had the issue, but also as a manager, as a team member, be generous with your understanding, with the expectation that people have personal lives. As you probably can't tell, I'm in my bedroom. My little daughter is running around the house right now. So life will now more than ever interact with your personal life, will interact with your work life. And so as managers, as team members, we have to be more forgiving, but everyone has to make sure that they're doing their best to just respect other people's time and not make it difficult to get work done if you are juggling a lot on your end. Just trying to make sure that you're planning ahead to minimize interruptions.
Absolutely. And so hopefully in the next not too crazy amount of time, we'll all be back to a relative normal. And we'll be able to get back into the same space as our coworkers if that's how you normally operate. But this is certainly a lesson, I think, for a lot of workplaces, that we may need to implement these policies at the drop of a hat, depending on what's going on. So I think one thing that it's very important as an employer to be thinking about when we get to that point is, okay, we do not want, theoretically, let's say we don't want an all remote environment all the time, but we do want to be prepared for next time. So a couple of quick thoughts that I had on my end, making sure that you have the infrastructure ready to go. So if possible, that means making sure that you have work purchased laptops ready to go for each employee, so that they have a device, a reliable device to bring home and to be ready to work with. Practicing good cybersecurity at all times. So those best practices that we talked about with cybersecurity, they're not just things that are important in a remote environment, but they're more important in a remote environment because you can't have the employee come in and bring the social security card and scan it right there in front of you. So you have no choice but to use these digital tools. And just making sure that you are consistently practicing good cybersecurity, establishing work from home guidelines early on, and allowing employees to work from home once a week, let's say, or once every 2 weeks, so that they get in the habit of it, so that if they need a space to work from, they're able to take responsibility for that space themselves. Say, okay, I need a desk. I need, a monitor. Because I can't be looking down at my laptop all the time. It hurts my neck, something like that, so that they can prepare this space for having to work from home, so that if it suddenly becomes a contingency again, they are ready to go and ready to work. And is there anything else that you might add to that list, Garrett?
No, I think that's a good list. And we are in this moment now, hopefully in the next few months, if not sooner, some normalcy will return. But this issue, unless we're able to get it under control, vaccines are created, things of that nature, could come back during flu season later this year. So all of these ideas, all of these tips definitely should be thought about and implemented sooner rather than later.
And then last, we just want to talk about how we might be able to help you if working with a remote team is something that you're currently struggling with a little bit. You want to implement some of these tools, but they're totally new to you, and you want a little bit of assistance with. As we had said, we have our consulting arm, which I work for, Lincoln Deployed. So we are always ready to help and assist. You can reach out at any time to mike@calldeployed.com. He'll be glad to get in touch with you, discuss what that project might be. We have a YouTube link here at the bottom, which I'll share in the chat after this conversation is over, which is an example of one of our projects. So you'll be able to see kind of what our workflow is like, how our team goes about getting these projects accomplished. And anything else that you'd add to that, Garrett?
Yeah, I'll offer for any of the think tanks and policy organizations on this, or if you just work with a non-technical team and you want to chat with me about what we're doing on the Lincoln network side, on the policy side, around some of these issues, I'm happy to talk. So my email is garrett@joinlincoln.org. And then we have this resource, Telegraph, Corey, that you didn't mention, that we'll be sure to send in the follow-up email, where it breaks down a lot of online tools like Slack. It puts it within the context of how an organization like a nonprofit or a advocacy group should be thinking about using these tools. So it provides some really great guidance and tips and optimization ideas. So we'll share a link to that website so you can access. It's sort of like an app store for C3s and C4s. And so we'll share that with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And I don't believe that we've got any questions. Let me just take a quick look here just to double check. And then go for today. Yeah, so I think that we are all set here. So thank you so much for your time, Garrett. I appreciate you having this conversation with me, us being able to hopefully help some of the people watching operate a little bit better with all that's going on.
Absolutely. Great job, Corey. And again, if we can be helpful to anyone who joined us, please just reach out to garrett@joinlincoln.org or mike@calldeployed.com. Stay safe and have a great rest of your week.
Bye, Garrett. Have a good one.
All right, Corey, you too.